The city of Lagos rose like a giant made of steel and smoke, its tall buildings stretching toward the sky as if trying to touch the ancestors. Glass towers shone under the sun, but at their feet sat small shrines where old women whispered prayers into the wind. It was a place where wealth walked boldly in fine suits, yet the spirit world still watched from every corner. In this land, the past and the present lived side by side, sometimes in peace, sometimes at war. The heartbeat of the city never stopped. From the crowded markets came the sharp calls of traders, their voices mixing with the sound of car horns and rushing footsteps. Drums from a distant festival blended with the laughter of children chasing each other down dusty streets. As the rhythm grew louder, it pulled together two worlds, one rooted in tradition, the other chasing power. In this place of mixed dreams, a story was about to rise like harmattan dust. Far from the noisy markets stood Kola Adeyemi's mansion, a vast estate surrounded by tall iron gates. The building shone like polished gold, catching the eyes of anyone passing by. Inside, everything looked perfect: marble floors, sparkling chandeliers, guards standing like carved statues. But shadows hid in quiet corners, holding secrets that the wealthy eyes of the city could not see. The walls carried the weight of silence, the type that grows when hearts inside a home no longer move together. Even though the mansion glittered with riches, something unseen walked through its hallways. At night, the lights flickered for no reason, and the wind hummed through the open spaces as if whispering warnings. Maids sometimes paused, sensing a strange presence they could not name. Elders would say, "A home can shine like gold, but still carry the footsteps of unrest." And in Kola's house, the air carried that quiet tension, an energy waiting to reveal itself. Kola Adeyemi, the man who ruled this mansion, was known across Lagos. People spoke his name with respect. They said he was the man who conquered the city with his mind and confidence. But inside his grand home, he walked like someone carrying an invisible burden. His success filled newspapers, yet his heart was slowly drying like a forgotten well. Among the household staff was Adaora, a young woman from a distant village where traditions were still alive. Her grandmother had raised her with stories, proverbs, and lessons from the ancestors. Because of that, her eyes saw more than what was in front of her, and her spirit listened to things others ignored. She carried herself with quiet strength, never loud, never seeking attention. Adaora's gift came from years of helping her grandmother grind herbs, pray over sick villagers, and understand the signs of nature. Sometimes, she could sense when trouble was near, long before anyone else noticed. She had learned that danger often starts like a soft breeze before growing into a storm. Yemisi, Kola's wife, was a beauty admired by many. She moved with grace, dressed in the finest clothes, and carried a smile that hid her deepest fears. She feared becoming invisible in her own home, feared that Kola's success would someday push her aside. The world expected perfection from her, and she tried hard to keep her crown from slipping. But the whispers of friends, the pressure to remain the perfect billionaire's wife, and the fear of losing her place created cracks in her heart. These cracks grew silently, turning her mind into a battlefield she never told anyone about. Behind her smile was a woman fighting shadows no one else could see. And so, in a city where spirits still watched the living, where wealth met old traditions at every corner, the stage was set. The wind carried a warning, though no one understood it fully. A tale of truth, fear, courage, and unseen forces was ready to unfold, beginning right here, in the house where gold could not hide the storm forming inside. The days inside the Adeyemi mansion began to cool, the same way harmattan winds slowly steal warmth from the air. Kola and Yemisi no longer moved like a couple breathing the same rhythm. Their words grew fewer, their silences heavier. When they sat at the same table, it felt as though two strangers were pretending to share a home. Kola buried himself in business calls. Yemisi hid her thoughts behind quiet smiles that never reached her eyes. Outside the walls, rumors began to crawl like scorpions in dry grass. Women whispered in beauty salons, guards traded stories at the gate, and even market women repeated the tale. Kola has grown soft toward one of his staff. Though they didn't say the name, Yemisi knew who they meant. Each rumor pierced her like a thorn. She tried to ignore it, but jealousy stirred inside her like a restless spirit. "They want to disgrace me," she muttered to herself. "They want to see me fall." Adaora watched everything with careful eyes. She moved softly around the house, but nothing escaped her attention. She saw the tired look on Yemisi's face, the tension in Kola's shoulders, The way the air between them felt tight, like a drum pulled too hard. She did not understand the full danger yet, but her spirit sensed that something dark had begun to grow. Little signs began to appear around the mansion. A plate slipped from a shelf and shattered on the floor, even though no one touched it. Lights flickered during the night, burning bright one moment and dim the next. A sudden breeze rushed through the living room, though the windows were closed. Adaora felt her skin rise in goosebumps. Her grandmother had taught her to read such signs. "When ancestors whisper," she once said, "the wise listen before trouble knocks." One morning, Yemisi walked into Kola's study with a small wooden tray in her hands. On it sat a carved cup filled with a warm, sweet-smelling drink. Her steps were steady, but her heart pounded loudly in her chest. "Good morning, my husband," she said softly. "I made something special for you. It will help with your stress." Kola barely looked up, too tired to question anything. The cup itself was beautiful, dark wood polished to a shine, its sides marked with old Yoruba symbols meant to protect marriages. But today, the symbols felt twisted, as if their meaning had changed. Something hidden waited inside the liquid, something meant to bind Kola's heart through fear instead of love. Adaora entered the study at that moment to deliver documents. As she stepped closer, a strange scent reached her nose, sweet but sharp, like herbs mixed without balance. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. The color of the drink seemed wrong, too cloudy for anything meant to heal. A cold shiver ran through her spirit, and she whispered under her breath, "This is not peace. This is danger." Kola reached for the cup, lifting it slowly from the tray. The room grew still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Adaora's pulse quickened, her instincts screaming louder than her voice. The ancestors seemed to tug at her spirit, urging her to act. The moment felt heavy, sharp, dangerous, like the seconds before lightning strikes. And just as Kola raised the cup to his lips, fate edged forward, ready to reveal the truth that would break open their home forever. Adaora sat on the edge of her small bed, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. The walls of the servant quarters felt like they were closing in on her. Her heart was divided into two trembling halves. One half whispered, "Keep quiet. It's not your place." The other half shouted, "Speak before harm comes." She felt trapped between silence and duty, unsure which path would destroy her faster. She thought about the money she sent home every month, money that kept her younger siblings in school and bought her grandmother's medicine. Without this job, her family back in the village would struggle like a dry farm waiting for rain. "If I lose this work," she whispered, her voice cracking, "what will happen to them?" The thought tightened her chest. It felt unfair that one household's problems could shake the lives of people miles away. The truth weighed on her like a basket filled with stones. In many African tales she had heard growing up, the truth spoken by someone powerless often came with a price. When a child warns elders of danger, her grandmother used to say, the child may be ignored, but trouble will not. Adaora felt that proverb crawling into her mind now, reminding her that staying silent could be worse than speaking. That night, she could not sleep. She tossed under her thin blanket as shadows danced on the walls. The wind outside sighed like old spirits passing by. Adaora felt the presence of her ancestors around her, gentle but firm, like elders watching a child struggle with a hard decision. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt their gaze urging her not to ignore the signs. When sleep finally caught her, a dream pulled her into a world of fire and broken pillars. She stood inside a grand house, Kola's mansion, but flames licked the walls and cracks split open the floor. She heard her grandmother's voice echo through the smoke, "A home built on lies will crumble, my child. Do not let fear blind you." Adaora jolted awake, sweat on her forehead, knowing the dream was not just a dream. It was a warning. Meanwhile, far across the mansion, Yemisi stood before her mirror, staring at her reflection as if searching for a flaw only she could see. Lately, younger socialites had begun fluttering around her husband, their eyes bright with hunger for attention and status. Their presence haunted her mind like shadows chasing her in broad daylight. Her friends didn't help. They laughed loudly at brunch, tossing their hair and saying things like, "A rich man must be controlled," and "If you don't hold him tight, another woman will." Their voices dripped with poison disguised as advice. Their words didn't comfort her, they twisted her heart even more. Yemisi ran a thumb across her cheek, feeling the smooth skin she feared would lose its shine. What if I'm no longer enough? She murmured. What if they take him away from me? In a world that praised youth like a treasure, she felt herself slipping from its hands. In her panic, she reached for an old name, Mama Fizeo, a woman she hadn't seen in years. Once known for her special remedies, she lived on the edge of town where rumors danced around her like restless spirits. Yemisi visited her in secret, her scarf pulled low over her face. Mama Fizeo looked her up and down with knowing eyes. You want your husband's heart to stay tied to yours, she said without being told. From a wooden shelf, she brought out a small pouch of herbs. These will make affection stronger, but they carry weight. If used wrongly, love can turn bitter. Yemisi hesitated only for a moment. The fear in her chest was stronger than caution. Give it to me, she said, her voice trembling. I will do anything to keep my home. Mama Fizeo shook her head slowly, like someone watching a storm gather. Remember what I said. Not every shortcut leads to peace. But jealousy had already swallowed Yemisi's wisdom. As she left with the herbs hidden in her purse, her mind was filled with a single thought. I cannot lose him. I will not. And with that decision, the path before her darkened, one step closer to the trouble the ancestors had already begun to warn about. Kola lifted the wooden cup slowly, as if it carried the weight of the ancestors. The whole mansion fell into silence. Even the flickering lamps seemed to hold their breath. His hand steadied, but the moment felt heavy, like fate itself was watching from the corners of the room. A sudden voice tore through the tension. Don't drink it! Adeora screamed, her voice shaking yet fierce. She pushed through the stunned crowd, tears shining in her eyes. Fear battled courage in her trembling steps, but she refused to be silent anymore. Her cry reached every soul in the room like thunder splitting the sky. Gasps rose around her. Servants froze mid-movement, their eyes wide like startled antelope. The mansion walls seemed to pull the sound into every corner, thickening the air with disbelief. Even the wind outside felt like it paused to listen. Kola's hand began to tremble. The cup rattled gently against the wooden tray. Confusion clouded his face as he looked at Adeora, then at Yemisi. Yemisi's eyes darted wildly, her chest rising and falling too fast. Her fear seeped through the room like smoke leaking from a hidden fire. The cracks in their marriage began to show in that quiet, dangerous moment. What is in this cup? Kola asked, his voice cold and sharp. Yemisi, what have you done? The question struck the room like a spear. No one moved. No one breathed. Even Yemisi seemed trapped between lies and the truth she had feared for too long. Speak, he demanded, his tone dropping to a deep, steady rumble. Let the truth walk forward. The room chilled. All eyes turned to Yemisi, waiting for the revelation that was now impossible to hide. An elder was called Baba Orilanize, a man known for reading the hidden messages of herbs and spirits. His gray beard touched his chest, and his steps carried the wisdom of many seasons. He took the cup gently, closed his eyes, and whispered an old Yoruba chant. With slow, practiced movements, he studied the mixture, letting tradition guide his understanding. When he opened his eyes, the truth settled on his tongue like bitter cola. This is no poison, he said. But it is not a blessing either. His voice carried the authority of storms. This mixture was meant to bind the heart, but it has turned harmful. A murmur swept through the room. Baba continued, its power has twisted. Instead of bringing love, it can break the spirit. Fear changed its nature. Desperation weakened its purpose. Whispers grew louder as he explained further. If Kola drank it, his mind may have wandered. His anger may have grown like a wild fire. Memories could slip away like sand in the river. Confusion, rage, and weakness would follow him. His words fell heavily, each one revealing betrayal rooted not in hatred, but fear. Kola stepped back, his chest tightening. His heart felt like a calabash cracking in his hands. He stared at Yemisi, not with anger first, but deep, wounded sorrow. So this is what our marriage has become, he whispered. A house built on fear, and a cup filled with lies? Yemisi's knees gave way. I only wanted to keep you close, she cried. I was afraid you were slipping away. But her confession only deepened the ache in his heart. The truth was now exposed like a wound under sunlight. Servants whispered behind their hands. Aunties exchanged sharp looks. Cousins muttered, "Uo, what kind of woman does this?" Word spread through the mansion like harmattan fire, fast, wide, unstoppable. Judgment traveled quicker than compassion, as it often does in African families. The once grand mansion felt tight, almost suffocating. Every hallway echoed with murmurs. Every room carried the weight of tension. Doors stayed half open, as if the house itself was peeking, listening, waiting for what would happen next. The air felt heavy with questions no one dared to ask out loud. Kola stood still, feeling the walls close in. The illusion of a perfect marriage had shattered. Truth, sharp and painful, filled the space where silence once lived. The elders arrived before sunrise, their wrappers sweeping the compound floor like silent warnings from the ancestors. Their presence alone reminded everyone that a family's shame was not its own, it belonged to the entire community. Their old eyes carried judgment, but also the responsibility to guide destiny when a home slipped out of balance. Yemisi stood in the center of the courtyard, alone. Her legs shook as the elders' voices circled her like beating drums. "You invited spiritual impurity into the Adeyemi home," one elder said. "You brought shame upon your husband," another added. Her tears fell freely, soaking the earth beneath her feet. She could not even lift her head to defend herself. Her silence became its own confession. Across the courtyard, Adaora stood with mixed emotions stirring in her chest. Some aunties held her hands and praised her, saying, "You saved our son from danger." Others hissed under their breath, claiming she had crossed a line meant for older wives to manage. She felt both celebrated and attacked, caught between gratitude and resentment. Kola's family gathered in tight circles, whispering sharply. One uncle stepped forward and declared, "Betrayal like this cannot sleep quietly. Answers must be given. Justice must be found." Heads nodded all around him. Even those who pitied Yemisi agreed that what she had done had wounded the entire lineage. The house felt torn in two. Some stayed close to Yemisi in quiet loyalty, while others avoided her like a shadow of bad luck. It was as if an unseen spirit had drawn a line across the compound. Truth stood on one side, fear on the other. Kola walked through the tension like a man carrying a heavy calabash. Every eye followed him. The atmosphere thickened, waiting for his choice, his voice, his judgment. No one dared to speak. The future of his marriage hung in the air like a storm cloud refusing to break. Later, he summoned Yemisi into the quietest room of the mansion, the old prayer room where his mother once lit candles. The walls were bare, the air still. Nothing could hide there. The room stripped both of them down to their truest selves. Yemisi collapsed before he even asked a question. "Kola, I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid you were slipping from me." Her voice broke like thin glass. Every word carried years of jealousy and insecurity she had buried under forced smiles. She confessed how her friends had filled her ears with dangerous ideas. "They told me a rich man must be controlled," she said. "They said if I didn't do something, you would replace me, like so many men do." Her hands shook as she clutched her chest. "I believed them more than I believed your love." Her fears spilled out, fear of younger women with brighter skin, softer voices, and modern ways. Fear of becoming invisible in her own marriage. Her confession echoed an old truth found in many African tales. A heart ruled by envy leads people down paths they never meant to walk. Outside, the sky opened. Thunder cracked sharply, rattling the window frames. Lightning flashed through the room, as if the spirits themselves were listening, reacting to the broken trust between husband and wife. The storm over Lagos roared louder, matching the storm in their hearts. Kola closed his eyes, letting the rumble of thunder fill the silence between them. The truth was now laid bare like a wound, painful, but necessary for healing or for ending. Kola sank into the high-backed chair by the wide window, staring out at Lagos as though the city could teach him what he had failed to learn in his own home. 4 years, he had built towers of steel and glass, but neglected the foundation of his own marriage. The laughter that once filled these halls had been replaced by silence so deep it pressed against his chest. He saw now the cracks he had ignored, small gaps at first, now wide enough to swallow the warmth between him and Yemisi. Memories of his pride returned like shadows at dusk. The nights he stayed at the office while Yemisi dined alone. The smiles he gave to others while neglecting hers. The arrogance in assuming that his wealth could replace love. Each recollection pierced him, reminding him that he had allowed ambition and reputation to become the pillars of his marriage. He realized, painfully, that the life he had built was more about how others saw him than about how he nurtured the woman beside him. His heart sank. He had worshipped image, and in doing so, had sown seeds of despair in the heart he claimed to love. The elder's words echoed in his mind, "A home untended will invite trouble." He had ignored that wisdom for too long, and now the trouble stood at the door, dressed in fear, jealousy, and betrayal. Kola's chest tightened as the weight of accountability pressed down. He felt every misstep, every silent neglect, and every failure to hold space for Yemisi's heart. Guilt coiled around him like a serpent, reminding him that even the mighty cannot escape the consequences of inattention and pride. Tempers rose next, flaring with the heat of years left unspoken. Yemisi's hands trembled, and her eyes darted between regret and fear. Kola's voice cut through the room, steady but sharp. "If you had succeeded, what would be left of us?" Yemisi could not answer. Silence filled the room, louder than any confession. Her inability to respond spoke volumes, the death of love once carefully molded between them. The marriage that once shone like polished brass now broke like clay under the weight of years and unspoken truths. Memories, promises, and dreams splintered into fragments, too fragile to restore. Kola's decision was firm yet sorrowful. He would separate, for even in love, betrayal must bear its consequences. A lesson older than the city itself whispered through his mind, justice and truth cannot be ignored without paying a price. He stood slowly, feeling the echoes of what was lost but also the necessity of action. To heal, to learn, to live honestly, that was the path forward, even if it meant walking it alone. The elders gathered, their faces lined with years of wisdom and the weight of countless family stories. Their hands moved in ritual, blessings murmured under their breath, weaving protection and praise through the air. Adeora stood before them, shoulders straight, eyes steady. The room hummed with respect. "Child, your courage has saved this home from shadows that no wealth could hold back," one elder intoned, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. Another placed a hand on her head. "May your heart remain as pure as the river that nourishes your village." Yemisi's lips trembled as she faced Adeora. Pain twisted into anger. "You think I do not see your plan? You covet what is mine. You wish to take my place." Her voice cracked like dry earth under the sun. The accusation, sharp and unfair, floated over the gathered family. Adeora's eyes did not waver. She bowed her head slightly and spoke softly, "I seek no place that is not mine to hold. I ask only to serve, as I always have." Her humility hung in the air, a stark contrast to the fear and bitterness displayed by Yemisi. The elders nodded, their eyes reflecting approval. Adeora's bravery, calm and unwavering, became a symbol of light amidst the broken trust that had shadowed the mansion. Even in the face of jealousy and false blame, she remained steadfast, reminding all present that courage and honesty are treasures beyond gold. Later, Yemisi gathered only what she could carry, leaving the mansion behind. The city's streets swallowed her as she returned to her mother's hut, wrapped in quiet shame. Village women whispered as she passed, speaking of the fall of a big man's wife, while nights of tears became her teachers, revealing the cost of choices made in fear. Her mother's words, steady and kind, guided her slowly toward healing. "I let my heart run faster than my mind," Yemisi confessed in solitude, the firelight flickering against her tear-streaked face. Each night, each reflection, became a step toward understanding, toward the humility and wisdom she had long ignored. Kola sat alone in the vast, silent mansion. The echoes of his own footsteps bounced off the marble floors, but no laughter, no chatter, no warmth answered him. For the first time, he truly heard the silence he had allowed to grow over the years, a silence born of neglect and pride. He closed his eyes and let the emptiness speak, each quiet moment a mirror reflecting the cracks he had ignored. The next morning, he walked through the streets of Lagos without guards or chauffeurs, blending into the rhythm of the city. No skyscrapers, no sparkling cars, only the pulse of the market, the children laughing in dusty lanes, and the elders calling blessings to passers-by. Humility pressed on him like the hot harmattan wind, reminding him that wealth cannot insulate a man from his own heart. He began visiting orphanages and community schools, quietly donating and listening. Charity became a balm for his restless spirit. He spoke to mothers, helped mend roofs, carried water alongside young men, and listened to stories of struggles and triumphs. Each act of giving, small or large, chipped away the stone around his heart, teaching him that emotional blindness could not be bought away with money. Returning home, he called Adaora to his study. "You have served this house with courage and wisdom," he said. "From today, you will be our household manager. Let no one question your place again." The staff, once used to a distant and proud Kola, noticed a softer man emerging, a man tempered by understanding, humbled by truth, guided by reflection. Far from the city, Adaora returned to her village with gifts earned through honesty. Beneath the sprawling Irako tree, elders gathered, praising her courage and the clarity of her heart. She renovated her grandmother's home, each brick a symbol of gratitude, each roof beam a sign of respect for tradition and family. The village women told her story to young girls, weaving lessons of integrity and bravery into their bedtime tales. Adaora smiled quietly one evening, watching the sun dip behind the hills. She had stood for truth without seeking reward. Peace filled her heart, stronger than any gold or title. She had honored her ancestors, protected the innocent, and left a mark on both city and village alike, a living testament to courage, humility, and the power of doing what is right. The wind whispered through the open windows, carrying the scent of early morning rain and the faint perfume of the garden blooms. A calm voice, the narrator of ages past, drifted softly through the halls of memory. "When love is chained by fear, it turns into poison," it said, echoing in every corner where trust had once dwelled. The words lingered, heavy as harmattan smoke, reminding all who had witnessed the trials that fear corrodes what hearts hold most dear. From the shadows of tradition, the ancestors spoke, their wisdom threading through the quiet stillness. A marriage built on lies is a hut without pillars. Though it may stand for a while, the first storm will reveal its weakness. Their voices carried the weight of countless generations, a lesson inscribed in both soul and soil. Even the lowly, those who walk humbly among the mighty, could act with courage. "Even the lowly can speak truth that saves the mighty," the moral echo whispered. Adaora's name was carried softly in that declaration, her bravery a beacon for those who feared the cost of honesty. "And blessings follow the brave, even when their voice trembles," came the closing counsel, a gentle reminder that courage is never wasted, and the smallest heart can change the fate of the greatest house. Kola stepped into the open courtyard, the first light of dawn painting the sky in gold and crimson. In his hand, he held the empty carved cup, once a vessel of deception, now a symbol of survival and clarity. He turned it slowly, feeling the weight of what had almost been lost and the lessons now etched deeply into his spirit. The sunrise glimmered across the city, brushing the edges of his mansion with warmth and promise. Kola breathed deeply, letting the cool air fill the cracks of his heart that pride had carved. With careful steps, he walked back inside. Each movement was steady, measured, and full of intent. A new heart beat within him, one awakened to humility, truth, and the strength that comes from learning through trial. Today, the mansion no longer felt like a fortress of fear, but a home where love, honesty, and courage could finally take root.